So in this video, I'm going to review two trades that I recently took, SHOP and FSLR. Both of these were losing trades, and both of these were mistakes, rookie mistakes that I made. So I'm not happy with them at all. But that's the reason I wanted to do a trade review so that I can really drill it in my mind, what mistake I made and how and why I should not make it again. So as usual, I'm going to rank all of these trades on SA, my position size, the stock selection, my entry criteria, my stop loss, and exit. So let's begin with SHOP. SHOP was a trade that I entered here, and as usual, I note all of my entries on Twitter for my own journaling. So I'm going to go back to the time when I took the trade to see what I was thinking. So this was a trade that was on my watch list that I had created for that day. It had made a really small, narrow day the day before on low volume. And right at the get-go, in the first 5 minutes, volume was coming in and the stock was going up. And I ideally wanted to enter at the 5-minute opening range high, but because my execution was sloppy and slow, I entered a bit higher than I would have liked to. So in terms of entry, that was a little bit of a mistake. And my stop loss, I did put as the swing low, which was the low of this day, which I think was fine given the current market environment we've been in. And if you've seen any of my previous trade reviews, then you know that we've been in a long 9-month sideways drop with not much traction in my portfolio, except recently I did have SMCI and LRCX workout, which is why I was able to increase the position size on SHOP from 0.12% to 0.25%. So this is just an application of simple progressive exposure. I had booked 4 hours worth of gains in my account, and I was using those profits to finance the risk on SHOP. So position size was fine. SA was fine too. The stock selection, I think, was good too. SHOP had been down, 90% from the top, but it had started to bounce back. And it was up 200% from the bottom. And this day was definitely the earnings day, and it announced positive stuff such as we're going to fire 20% of our staff, we're going to sell off some parts of the business that are not positive. Plus, more importantly, it had 2 days of follow through on high volume. So overall, the stock was very bullish and the stock selection was fine too. Entry, as I just noted, was a bit sloppy. Stop loss, which was the swing low that I had put in this case, was fine. Now the exit is where I end up making a mistake. So let me show you what my plan for the exit was and what I actually ended up doing. So SHOP quickly went up 1 hour, and given the kind of environment we've been in, usually when I get 1 hour worth of gains, I move my stop loss to break even. And that's what I did do on this day. So I did move my stop loss up to break even. But what happened the next day was that SHOP gapped down and opened exactly where my break even was. Now I was watching it in the pre-market, and this is where I broke my own rules and got into wishful thinking that, okay, it might chop around for like 5 or 10 minutes, but it's going to come back up and go above my break even. So what I did was I just changed the stop loss, which I had set at the break even, to back to the original stop loss, which was at the swing low. Not even the low of day, but the swing low. Now that is a terrible mistake. One of the cardinal rules of trading is you never move a stop down. Once you've moved the stop loss up, you never ever want to move it down. But I broke that rule myself. SHOP just kept going down, It opened here. Let me show you the 5-minute chart so you can see exactly what it looked like that day. This is where it gapped down. It went up a little bit, and then the whole day just faded until it finally stopped me out. And what was supposed to be a break-even trade ended up being a -1 hour trade. So this was really bad. And I can't even sometimes believe that I still make these mistakes because I really shouldn't. The only way this trade could have been worse is if I removed the stop loss entirely and didn't keep any on. That would have been, that's probably the biggest rule break a trader can ever do. But this one comes pretty close to. And I'm just not happy with just not happy with what I did here. Let me show you FSLR to add on to the pain. FSLR, the SA was pretty much the same, except with the gains that I gave back in shop and a couple other small scratches that I took, my account had lost the padding that it got from SMCI and LRCX, and I was back to trading pilot size positions where I was risking 0.12% of my total equity. And in general, the stock has had amazing relative strength. Look at the pink line and how it outperforms the S&P. So this is a really strong stock, but you could argue that it's also extended. And it's already made, from the first EP that it made, it's already made a 200% move. So that was the reason I was going to take it as a swing trade and not a position trade. So let me show you what I was looking at when I entered FSLR. So the recent catalyst was my main reason for keeping FSLR on my watch list, despite it being extended. And it's not just the move of 30% that day, which was super bullish, but more importantly, look at the volume. It traded 24 million shares, while the average is 3.5 million a day. And 24 million shares of a $200 stock. So that is not a small amount. And while it did give back a lot of that gain, it was still holding up at least half of its gap. And all of this give back was on very low volume. So these were the positives that I was looking at in terms of the stock. However, in hindsight, I could say that the stock selection itself was probably flawed because of how extended the trend is, but also because of how ridiculous this move was given the news. The news this day was that it's buying another solar company for 80 million. But for 80 million, for an acquisition that was worth 80 million, the stock had moved a quarter, like 25%, and this is a $20 billion stock. So it had made a $5 billion market cap jump for an $80 million acquisition. Now, this had struck me odd as that day itself as well, but because of the volume, I still decided to keep it on my EP list. So I'm not so sure that my stock selection was really valid or justified, especially given that the fundamentals behind the news were a bit shaky and really hard to understand or justify. I should have waited for a better setup in this stock. I should have asked for more rather than just jumping in. The size was fine. The SA, let me show you what the SA looked like and why I got in. Because some of you, rightly so, did ask why I got in, especially props to Jimit Patel, who questioned, surprised you took the trade today. Overall market is red and most of the watch list red too. So thank you for pointing that out. At the time when I took FSLR, about a third of my watch list had gone green for those brief few moments. And I did take FSLR right at the open, like about, or I think 10 minutes after the open. And At that moment, the tan had gone green on the day 2. The tan being the ETF that represents the solar stocks, which FSLR is part of. And you can see FSLR reclaiming the 50-day moving average, which is the red line. So for a moment there, this seemed like a good trade and the SA was in my favor, but things quickly changed. And let me show you the 5-minute chart of FSLR to make this even more clear how quickly things changed. So this is when I entered yesterday, and you can see it probably went up like another minute or two, and then it was a straight fade until it stopped me out. Now, what was the mistake in this case? I would say it was the exit once again. It was definitely the stock selection, the entry to some extent, because all the stars were not aligned, so to speak, when I was entering. It was more of wishful thinking and maybe a bit of FOMO coming in, and I just wanted to get into a trade. I could have waited for a few more minutes and seen if that move would really hold above the 50-day or if the tan would really sustain its move in the green, or if the entire watch list was remaining green, or just it was just like a 1 or 2 minute thing before it all reversed. So definitely the stock and the entry were bad as well. But I think the worst of all in this case was my exit. Because at this point, when FSLR gave up its VWAP and just started going straight down, and you can see some volume coming in when it started to go red as well, I did have a feeling that this was going to fail and not work out. Now, when I do have this feeling, ideally, I should just cut my losses short and get out, or at least start to trim the position. I could have taken half off when it gave up VWAP, or a quarter off. And this would have prevented me from taking an entire 1 hour loss and maybe cut that loss down to half hour or even a quarter hour. And this has been something that I'm not very good at and consciously trying to work on, to cut my losses even before they reach my stop loss, because I think that saves a lot of capital. And oftentimes it becomes pretty clear before the stop losses hit that, okay, this trade is really not going to work, or that the odds have shifted and the odds are it's no longer going to work in my favor. And at those times, it's my wishful thinking that creeps in, and I'm thinking, let me just wait and see, maybe it'll come back. And that's something I need to work on and get over. The other thing that has been my Achilles heel always is FOMO. And there was a bit of FOMO in this trade too. Also, you can see the similarities between the mistake I made in Shopify and First Solar. In both of these, even when the stock started to go down, my wishful thinking took over, and rather than cutting my losses at less than 1 hour, or rather than cutting my losses before they hit the full stop loss, I was just hoping and wishing that it bounces back and I don't have to take a loss at all. So that is definitely a weakness that I want to try working on as well in the future. Hopefully this helps you guys as well. This has been very informative for me, and I have reflected on this all day yesterday, and I hope that I can improve on these two weaknesses that I have and not continue to make the same mistakes again and again.